Hari Om. So we will start with the prayer as usual. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Bhadram Karnebihi Yamadevaha Bhadram Pashe Makshaviryajatraha Hirairangai Vishnuvagam Swastadurbihi Vyashemaye Vahitam Yadayu Swastina Indro Vruddhashravah Swastina Pusha Vishwavedah Swastina Starksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, there seems to be a slight lag between what you speak and what I hear. There is a second or two. So have patience if I don't answer immediately if there are any questions.
We'll just let you do it.
No, it's okay. Even if some questions are there, something like that, I may not respond immediately. There is a lag between my hearing and your telling. Okay? Okay. So we have started chapter 3 or answering the question number 3. That's what we have seen in the last class. Correct? So atahainam, ataha always indicates after that. After what? After two of the students ask their questions and hopefully Rishi Pippalada answered their queries to the satisfaction of those two students. Those two students went back to the back of the group, and the third student came forward. And this is what the imagination is going. Yeah, Ataha. He didn't describe all this. Third student started asking his question, and the third student we have seen was Kaushalasya Ashvalayanaha. So this is the student who asked the question. Who is that? Kaushalasya. Our textbook says Kaushalya, son of Ashwalayana. So his name is Kaushalya, and his who is he? He is son of Ashwalayana. That is one way. Some of the texts, if you read, you may have a different version where it says his name is Ashwalayana, and actually he's son of Kaushalya. So there are two versions you may come across if you read many texts on this particular Upanishad. But don't worry, we follow what Gurudev has said here. Says that Kaushalya is his name and is son of Ashwalayana. Really doesn't matter to us. The two terms are there, Kaushalya, and the one more is Ashwalayana. We have seen the significance of this name vis-a-vis the text that we are reading, at what level we are reading. So this particular person is asking a tough question as per Rishi Pippalada. And we have seen why it is called as tough question. Any question that is related to something beyond the grasp of the mind, which is required to be understood intuitively. There are certain concepts in this world which we only understand intuitively. There is no specific mind application to that or intellect application to that. We understand this based on the based on intuition. Like for example, what we said was space. The concept of space can be understood only with respect to the objects in them. If there is only space and space with nothing else that you are able to see, you cannot grasp it with either of the five senses that you have. You cannot touch the space, you cannot see the space, you cannot smell the space. Of course, smelling space in India is very easy, but that is not really space you are smelling, but other contaminants that you smell, really speaking. But space by itself, it is beyond the grasp of the five senses, so to say. So that becomes an intuitive knowledge to you, but every one of us know what space is. There is no doubt about that, what space is in any one of our minds. So intuitively we grasp the meaning and knowledge of the space. Now that becomes a subtle if you want to understand. Suppose you want to say, yeah, I understand space, but how I am grasping it? If that question comes, it becomes very difficult because you are not doing it with any of the five senses. For example, any of the object outside world, I can describe. Yeah, I can smell that particular this one, or I can touch and see whether it's hard or soft. Very easy for us to understand that way. But since this particular thing is beyond that five, it becomes very difficult. So here, the question that this Kaushalya, we've seen, anybody who can do Kushala Karma, very skilled work, is Kaushalya. So a person who is skilled in terms of using either five senses or one which is beyond the five senses becomes a skilled person, a Kushala. Yeah. Similarly, Ashwalayana, Ashwa is always indicative of the mind. So Ashwalayana is a person who has grasp over his mind or control over his mind. So we are talking about a person who is either doing upasana on the mind or already finished his upasana. But because we are looking at the student level, not a teacher by himself, we are telling that this Ashwalayana is somebody who is ready to gain the control over the mind. So we are talking of Manomaya Kosha here, and a person who has already overcome the Karma Kanda. Like the previous question was Karma Kanda related. Person who has already done a little bit knowledge, or has the knowledge on the various yajna, yaga, etc., etc. He understands all the devas and the concepts beyond. Now he is trying to control his mind with that particular knowledge. So he becomes Ashwalayana. That's why I said whether he's son of Ashwalayana or son of Kaushalya really doesn't matter. He is both Kaushalya and Ashwalayana. One who is trying to gain control over the mind and who is skillful. Means already he has overcome the requirements of gaining skills over the Karma Kanda aspect or Karma Yoga aspects. He is there in the path anyway. So he has asked actually where from this prana has come. So he's asking, sir, where from this prana is born? Prana, where did it born? Where this came from? And how does it enter the body? And third question he has asked is, how does he dwell by dividing himself? Because in the previous question, Pippalada told him that Prana declared that I, by dividing myself, actually rule the entire senses. So now question automatically, the second person is asking, third question comes as, where from? How are you dividing? Where are you in terms of these divisions that you are talking about? And obviously, I'm seeing many people dying. And when somebody dies, we say, Pran chale gaya. So where does it go? How does it go? So a question automatically is coming is, how is the prana leaving? How is it born? How it is dwelling? Where it is dwelling? And how did it enter to start with? And how is it dwelling in the body? And how is it going? These four are related to prana linked with the body very clearly. And the fifth question he has asked is, how does it support external things? And sixth question is, how does it support the internal things? Adhyatma as well as Adi Bhautika, outside and inside. So these are all a kind of a hinted things in question 2. When describing prana, the senses actually did a prana eulogy. It did a lot of praises to the prana. So now the third question is coming. Okay, prana is so great you are telling, but tell me about this prana that you have eulogized in the first two questions. Because there is no doubt, even in the first question, when prana and rai were created, Pippalada was very, very clear. Prana has got a higher pedestal compared to rai matter. Although you can see, if you are at that level, you can see the entire world as rai. Because even the form, it is in a formless form also, if it is there, it is still a rai. Means A thought is there, for example. The thought is without any form, we know that. But Rishi says you can visualize the that particular thought as with form. Means what? What are the type of thoughts I have? I have thoughts about the objects of the world. So if I am thinking about a pen, for example, the pen is not I'm experiencing pen outside. I'm actually experiencing the pen inside. The form is coming into my mind, and the form I'm giving a name as a pen. And once I spread the word around, this is pen, everybody accepts this is pen. Then when that form comes into my mind, that becomes, I recognize that as a pen. So I'm saying that even the thoughts are Rai. I can visualize like that. I have a vision like that. So everything is Rai. But no doubt, Pippalada said, Prana has got a higher pedestal when it comes to Rai, indicated like that. And so that we don't have any doubt about that, in question 2, very clearly Pippalada said, Prana is the best. Now, third question when it comes, he says, Prana is so good you are telling, let me understand this Prana. That is the 6 questions that this particular Sishya, who has already overcome the Karma Kanda, who is in the process of understanding the mind, is asking these 6 questions. And to be clear, Kaushalya, Pippalada says to him, Kaushalya, in the second verse, he said, you ask more difficult questions. Means what I explained already, why it is a difficult question. Because it is beyond the grasp of the mind and the senses. This particular thing becomes a transcendental question, so to say. Transcendental matter is the wordings of Gurudev here. In his explanation, he says it is beyond, it is touching the transcendental issues or matter. But because you are supremely devoted to Brahman, I shall tell you the answer. So Pippalada first praise the student so that he is not lost. If somebody says you are asking all silly questions, then the student will not have interest in listening to the answer anymore. So first he says, yeah, what best, you are the best student. You are already Brahmanishta. So I will answer your question. You are asking a very, very tough question to me, but I will try and answer. Because that is the promise that he has made before, to the students, that he will answer after they are serving him for 1 year. Remember, 1 year all the students served him before he started answering one question from each. Remember that, so I told that this particular question 3, very interesting one, because after hearing how great the prana is, now we are about to hear something which is shocking to the students. First 2 students must have felt very bad after hearing this particular answer from Pippalada, but we will see. So we will chant first, Atmana Esha Prano Jayate Yathaisha Purushe Chayai Asmin Etadatman Etadatatam Manokritena Ayati Asmin Sharire. So here in this particular, this one, Pippalada is answering the first 2 questions of the student, Ashwalayana. He is answering first 2, where it is born and how did it enter the body. These 2 questions were the first 2 questions. So he's answering these 2 questions in this particular verse. He says, Atmana Esha Prano Jayate. So suddenly he is bringing a new term here. Till now we have seen from Hiranyagarbha, you have prana and rai. And Hiranyagarbha, so that we don't think prana is different from him, he said, Hiranyagarbha himself manifested as prana and rai. And this prana can be compared to the manifested sun, and rai can be compared to the manifested moon. So in this chain of events from Hiranyagarbha to right to the end, when it talks about a jiva in the womb, he says there is nothing really created. Everything is a manifestation. So in that sense, what do we say? The same Hiranyagarbha manifested as prana and rai. So what is prana? Nothing but Hiranyagarbha. From prana, I am talking about prana line. Yeah, he says Surya got created or manifested. Means what? Surya is nothing but symbol of the Hiranyagarbha in the world. So whatever I am seeing the role of Hiranyagarbha, I can attribute a similar role to Surya. So if Hiranyagarbha is the creator, let us say, I can see that Surya is responsible for the entire creation of the jivas in the world. Unless the sunlight is there or that Surya Rasmi is there, sun energy is there, there is no possibility for any of the life on the earth. So I am attributing similar powers to Surya that are there with, supposed to be there with Hiranyagarbha. So who is Surya? Nothing but Hiranyagarbha. Symbolically, I am seeing this. What is the advantage of all these things that we are talking about? This particular aspect is called Upasana. Upasana is a very, very important subject that is discussed in Upanishads, in the sense that once we are so much into the world, I am not able to take out the individuality from myself. If I have to take out individuality and say I am totality, because ultimately Aham Brahmasmi, I have to realize after reading these texts. So if I have to do that, I have to shed the individual aspects of me, grasp to the totality of this one. So when I say same Hiranyagarbha became Surya and I do Surya Upasana, because Hiranyagarbha difficult to do Upasana. There is nothing concrete. This is similar to the idol worship that we talk about in Hinduism. It is the ideal behind, as Gurudev says, by going through the idol in front of me. I'm not really praying to the idol. I'm not praying to the stone or the metal in front of me. I am actually praying to the ideal behind. If I salute to the flag, Gurudev says, I'm not saluting to the pole and a cloth, piece of cloth. I am actually saluting to the ideal of the country behind that flag. Similarly, idol, when we say, we do idol puja, but really I am not praying to the stone or the metal in front of me. The ideal behind that, I will be doing that. So similarly, here when we talk about Surya Upasana, the idea is, because I find it difficult to identify who this Hiranyagarbha is, whereas Surya every day he comes in front of me, whether I want, whether I don't want. Sometimes I don't want him to come up because I want to sleep for 2 more hours. Especially in Calgary, sometime later, maybe by 4 o'clock, he will come up. No, I don't want you, please, down. But he comes up. Every day he comes up. I can't avoid him. When I can't avoid him, I say he is the God. So I do Upasana on this Surya and say that I see the qualities of Hiranyagarbha. You are nothing but Hiranyagarbha. So prana becomes Hiranyagarbha. We have seen already in terms of how Hiranyagarbha can be viewed as different levels. Prana is Hiranyagarbha, Rai is also Hiranyagarbha. So here when we say Pranaha, Atmana Yesha Prano Jayate. Atma. So suddenly a new term is introduced by the Upanishad here, by Rishi Pippalada. So till now we thought that prana is the ultimate. Prana is the creator. Without prana, nothing else is there. Entire creation is because prana. Now he says, because the question came from the student, he says, prana is not the ultimate. There is something called an Atma. Atma in our dispense is Satchidananda Atma. Sat Chit Ananda Atma. Means what? this particular thing is nothing but the pure awareness, pure consciousness principle. Till now, prana is being told as that awareness, that consciousness principle. Now he is telling there is a father for this prana also. So where did this Hiranyagarbha came from? Hiranyagarbha came from Atma. This Satchidananda Atma. Satchit Ananda Atma is nothing but that awareness principle, that consciousness principle becomes the Esha Prano Jayate. So he's answered the first question of the student. How did this prana, where is this prana born? It is born of the Atma. Clear? Now, Yatesha Purushe Chaye. Chaye Tasmin Etat Atatam. Now, moment he told that this prana is born out of Atma. Normally, for a student who is in this world, suppose we say that this particular, let us say, ornament is made out of the gold. Somebody may ask, which gold? So the goldsmith might show a lump of a 22 karat gold, so that he knows that it is not a pure 24 karat gold, but it is slightly contaminated 22, because ornamental gold is 22 karat. Or if you are more this one, maybe 18 karat. So you have a lump of gold out of which the ornament is made. Means what? The lump of gold, if this ornament, let us say, is 5 tola, then out of the lump of that gold, 5 tola gold got reduced, and you have a 5 tola ornament prepared. Means what? Any source that is there, my understanding as a layman is, anybody says that this particular thing came out of the something, the out of something where the source is there, that got reduced to the same amount. If a pot is made out of a clay which is there, a set of clay, then that amount that is used in the pot is reduced from the source. So this is actually called Arambhavada or Parinamavada. This is called Parinamavada in this one. So many of our philosophies accept Parinamavada, because that is the most logical thing when I see creation around me, whether it is a pot or an ornament or a steel vessel or a steel, this one doesn't matter what, the source gets reduced by that amount and the effect is to the same amount. So if I make enough material out of objects out of the original source depletes. For example, you see in India, there used to be, when we were young, we used to read a Kolar gold mine. In Karnataka, there used to be a Kolar gold mine. All our textbook used to say. But by the time I reached 12th standard, they closed the Kolar gold mine. Why? Because they have taken out. All the gold that was readily available was taken out of it. It ran out of the sources. No longer it is economically viable to mine gold from that particular mine anymore. We have used up everything. Means what? Source got exhausted. By creating the effects, source got exhausted. That is what our normal understanding. This is called Parinamavada. Many of the philosophy will accept that by telling that if somebody has created this particular creation has come out of that, then the original source is exhausted. Another example which normally we find is if a curd is set out of the milk, curd got created, where is the milk? I cannot make tea anymore. Milk has gone. So this is Parinamavada. So that is our normal response which used to be there. Sorry. So this particular thing, our Rishi wants to avoid us thinking. Yeah. In fact, the verses like this were used by ShankarJi and even Vyasacharji before for us to understand a very important concept of Advaita Vedanta. The very, very important verse. So I'm taking some time on explaining these things. Yeah. So here what we are telling is Yathesha Purusha Chayai. So there is something called Vivartavada. Vivartavada is something, is the concept of creation in Advaita Vedanta. So Rishi is here explaining this particular Vivartavada as the concept of creation. How is he doing it? He says, Yathesha Purushe. Means, just as the a shadow, Chaya is the shadow. Yeah, Chaya is the shadow. Just like a shadow gets created out of a man, similarly, Rishi says, prana is created out of the Atman. So very clear in terms of what he is trying to say, that although I am telling you that prana got created out of the or Hiranyagarbha got created of the Atman, the pure consciousness, it is just like a shadow that is created out of a man. So the entire pomp that we have created out of around the prana now is completely deflated out of nowhere. Rishi is telling that Yathesha Purushe, right? Just like a shadow is created out of the man, this particular prana is created out of the Atman. Now there are many things associated with that, but we will come to that. We will first see the word meaning of this. Tasmin etat atatam. This word atatam is something like a spreading over, is atatam. Spread completely over something becomes an atatam. Why it is important again? For example, in this particular case, when we talk about Vivartavada, I'll come to that as to what is Vivartavada. The greatest example of ShankarJi, what we use, of snake and rope. If a rope is there at a particular time in the evening when light is not so well and the person is already worried or of fearful nature of the dark, he is seeing a snake that is roaming around when only a rope is there at that particular place. We have seen. So here it is as if to say that particular snake is actually nothing but completely spread over that particular rope. In the sense, I'm not seeing a rope. I'm only seeing a snake there. It is as if the snake is completely spread over the rope, covering it up. So this aspect of avarana, because of avarana, because of the person, something being completely enclosed, I get a next aspect called avarana vikshepa, projection. Because I am not seeing the snake, I am actually projecting I'm not seeing the rope, I am projecting a snake on that particular spot. So avarana vikshepa, very important concept in, again, Advaita Vedanta. So here, by the term atatam, spread across, that avarana is very, very important for us to understand how this particular thing has come. So it's a substratum. Rope remains a substratum. The substratum remains hidden from my view. So I project something beyond as a false thing as the truth. Snake becomes the truth for me when I actually do the avarana of the rope. So this atatam word is referring to that important concept there. Manokrutena. So with this actually atatam, the first question is answered. So how is it born? It is born out of Atma. Very clear. But immediately, so that we don't have a concept of Parinamavada, very clearly Rishi has talked about, no, don't think it is real true. It is like a shadow of the man. We will go into that, the details of the shadow, what it exactly means. Yeah. Manokrutena is the second answer that is coming now. From where, how did it enter the body? So he says, Manokrutena ayati asmin sharir. Ayati came. How did it come inside the Sharira body? It came because of the actions of the mind, it says. Mano krutena. Kruta is something which is done. So it is mano krutena. Because of the mind's actions, this prana has come into your body, it says. Clear in terms of the word meaning of this? This is a very, very important verse in Prashnopanishad, wherein it actually the Vivartava, the entire Advaita Vedanta's concept of this creation, understanding this creation as mithya, is a very important role this particular verse will play. Yeah. So what we heard, prana is nothing but Hiranyagarbha, or the total mind. Hence, what the question that is being asked is, what is the source of Hiranyagarbha? Where from the Hiranyagarbha came into picture. That is the actual meaning of the question, is what Shankaracharya and Gurudev are telling us. Okay. And we have seen that this particular in Vyavahara, when something gets created out of something, the source material gets depleted. So in order to understand, for us to understand that source material, nothing is happening to it, the very beautiful example, like a shadow getting created out of the human being is being given. That is how the prana got created out of Atma. So now, what is the status of this prana that we eulogize so much, that is the best, that is that, that is that. And now it is telling, it is now reduced to a level of a shadow. The prana is nothing but like a shadow. Now, there are some interesting aspects with respect to the shadow. Yeah. Now, is there any effort or will on our behalf to create a shadow? I just stand in front of a source of light, or I just pass by. I don't have any control over it. At appropriate conditions are there, a shadow automatically comes out of a person. So when prana is said to be a shadow of Atman, it is telling you Atman's will is not there in creation of this shadow. It automatically gets generated because of the very nature of that Atman. That's why we say Atma, we compare it with light. When that particular source of light is there, automatically that particular thing gets created. Prana gets created because of the very nature of that particular Atma, and there is no will associated, no intent associated with the Atma. It automatically gets created. Prana gets created. Prana, when we are talking of Hiranyagarbha. Second thing is, shadow has no reality of its own. Can it exist without a person? So when we talk about the reality associated, we are not denying the existence of the shadow. Children get, there are many YouTube videos, a child first time when he sees the shadow gets completely perturbed. Why? Who is this fellow following me? Children run across thinking that somebody is following. But really speaking, there is no reality associated on its own. Existence of something which cannot be denied, but whose existence is completely dependent upon the original source, where from shadow is coming, is what mithya is. So shadow becomes a very, very good example for the concept of vidya for us to understand. So when we say prapancha is illusion, really speaking, shadow is not an illusion. Shadow is something everybody can experience. But Gurudev puts it very fantastically, this shadow, forget about shadow, it is nothing but a darkness, correct? This shadow is nothing but darkness in a light created by the object which is coming or blocking that particular light. So it's a darkness. But is there really something called darkness? If you want to investigate, now darkness is what? That which envelops the objects is darkness for us. In a dark room, when we go, I can't see any object. And which is the pramana for that? My eyes are the pramana. And eyes, we know, require light for it to operate. So if eye is my pramana to investigate the darkness, for example, I require a light source to investigate anything for that matter, using my pramana of the eyes. Now, if I try to investigate the so-called darkness and I put on the light, darkness disappears. So he says that this particular concept of darkness itself is so beautifully explaining the concept of mithya. Gurudev says, or ShankarJi says, is that if you try to investigate this darkness, it disappears, no longer there. But experientially, each one of us know darkness is there. I get afraid of walking into a dark room. So darkness is something where it is there, but whose experience requires the presence of a substratum behind. So a shadow is there, but substratum of the body or a object is very much required for us to understand this particular concept of the shadow. So it doesn't have reality of its own. Reality of a shadow depends upon the reality of the object or a person in this particular case, a man. Yeah. Second is prana. When I extend this to prana and atma, what it means is prana gets created in the mere presence of the atman. It has got an experiential aspect with respect to the creation, but it doesn't have an existence of its own. So without an atman behind, prana can never be created. Prana can be experienced only as long as atman is behind. If a person just goes out of the range of the light, shadow disappears. The creation is withdrawn the moment the Ishvara steps out of the light of the Brahman. In other words, yeah. So withdrawing of the laya, when we talk about laya of the universe, etc., what it means is that Brahma is stepping out of the, Ishvara is stepping out of the light of the Atman for this to disappear. He need not go one by one in terms of pralaya. Pralaya means everything disappears just like that. Object is not reduced in any way. So the Brahman doesn't get reduced in any way with the creation of the so-called prana. We have seen already, Parinamavada does not apply here. Atman will remain as it is. There is no change in the Atman for creation of the so-called prana. Although prana and atma, both of them appear to be the same. In terms of Satchidananda, prana and atma appears to be more or less the same. However, this has got a pseudo aspects associated with the prana, whereas the atma remains the original, untouched, unspoiled, unreduced. Now, these are the terms that are used normally while describing the Brahman and Ishvara, if you see. Yeah. So this is what the concept of shadow is bringing into the discussion here between the Guru Pippalada and the students there. Yeah, object is not reduced in any way. And prana is only a reflected reality that gets manifested because of the very intrinsic nature of the Atma. I mentioned that before. By the very intrinsic nature of that Atma, prana automatically gets manifested. Shadow is getting manifested. Really, there is no creation of the prana because the shadow itself doesn't have that reality. So it just gets manifested, so to say. But remember, we must take the example only to that level. So don't extend the man shadow or human shadow thing beyond that. It is only to say that the prana is similar to a shadow, which is nothing but a mithya. The concept of mithyatvam is very central to the concept of Advaita Vedanta. You don't find the word mithya anywhere in the Vedas directly coming, except for one Upanishad, which is kind of which actually says that there are 108 Upanishads or something like that. Part of that you find this word mithya coming into picture. But some people say, no, this is creation of the Advaita Vedantins. Really, there is no mithya term. There need not necessarily be a mithya term in the Upanishads. Concept of mithya is there in many Upanishads. That is the argument of ShankarJi. He says when Prashnopanishad clearly says prana is like a shadow to the man, to the Atman. Prana to Atman is similar to shadow to a man. Very clear. What does it mean? It means mithyatvam. It means the pseudo reality associated with the prana with respect to the Atman. So he gives lot of examples of this particular thing, explaining this particular verse. Yeah. Gurudev actually talks about another example he gives in his explanation. If you read this, he talks about a object in a mirror. The image of an object in the mirror is similar to the shadow. Can I experience the image in the mirror? Yeah, I'm seeing myself. I spend hours together in front of the mirror when I want to color my hair or to trim my this ones. I do that. I'm experiencing that. But has it got a reality of its own? Experientially, it is there, but reality-wise, it depends on the object. Without me in front of the mirror, disappears within a second. One full paragraph, Gurudev explains this. Sometimes in a jovial fashion, telling that you cannot change the image. If you have a ugly face in front of the mirror, the image remains ugly, kind of a thing, Means whatever is there, mirror truly reflects. So whatever is there as an Atman, it is not to say that it is bad or good. He says if there is a prana is a reflection, like instead of shadow, he uses this reflection of the object in the mirror to say that if Atman has got Sachidananda, then the prana appears to have Sachidananda. If my truth is this, mirror reflects this truth. So prana seems to be very, very great in terms of my experience. So when I say my prana is there, prana I am experiencing in my intellect. Intellect appears bright. I am able to do, and this comes from Maya, for example, the three Shaktis that are there. Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, what are the other three Shaktis? Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti Swarupini. The Maya is described as Ichha Shakti. We have the Shakti to desire. We have the power. Shakti means power. Power to desire, power to gain knowledge, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, power to create, power to act. Where from these three are coming? They are three coming from same Sachidananda Atma. Because that particular Maya, that particular concept has got these three powers, I am having the power of Ichha Shakti. Nobody need to train a small child. When he sees a toy, his desire automatically gets out. Nobody need to even teach them. Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti. These three Shaktis are inherent, inbuilt in a human being, because they are nothing but a reflection, a shadow of that particular Shakti that is there, which is inherent in the creation or the source of that creation. So my desire becomes a power for me. Okay. Now, word atad, I already mentioned word atad is a very important. The second concept that is going to come up is this atad word in terms of my creation for Vivartavada. Remember, Vivartavada is the Advaita principle for the creation. So what we are telling, Vivartavada is something like creation of the snake out of the rope. Rope does not intend to create this, it automatically gets created. Rope doesn't reduce in any way with respect to the snake, it automatically comes. Yeah, without any reduction. So entire creation is in the similar principles of what I described here is Vivartavada. So Shankaracharya's or the previous Vyasacharya's creation of Vivartavada is depending upon a similar concept with respect to the entire universe that we must understand, similar to the prana. But any mithya vastu, like a snake that got created or a water that got created in a desert sand, everything requires a substratum. So here, and substratum is completely kind of spread across by the or avarana, completely done by the effect that got created. And here in this particular case, what we say is Atma created prana in that sense, but prana is somehow spreading all across the Atman. So nobody sees Atman. I am only seeing the reflected reality, which is the prana. And that prana becomes myself. Real prana is the Atma, but I am seeing only a reflected prana, reflected shadow as myself. And I'm getting involved with this particular shadow. Similar to a child thinking that the shadow is behind him and running around helter-skelter. Interesting, actually, this chaya and light and shadow. If you see Surya Deva in our Shastras has got two wives. One wife is known as Suvarchala, means the light, Suvarchala, bright light is one wife. And the second wife is known as Chaya Devi, a shadow who is there. Since we are telling that that particular prana, Surya is nothing but prana, prana is nothing but Hiranyagarbha or Prajapati, and same Hiranyagarbha is now, we are told, is nothing but the Atman. So this particular thing has got two realities associated. One is called Suvarchala, which is nothing but the Atma associated with this, and the reflection of that Atma becomes Chaya Devi. Now you see how our stories are woven in terms of, for us to really do an upasana. What I'm trying to say is, when you read a story that Surya has got two wives, and our mind should not go into similar concepts of husband and wife. Oh, how come Hinduism doesn't allow polygamy, but how Surya got married to two ladies? So really speaking, nothing to do with ladies and getting married and all that stuff. Yeah. The concept is that it has got Surya and Suvarchala, light, and there is a shadow associated. There is a original consciousness, awareness associated with the Surya. At the same time, there is a reflection. Not reflection, but a mithya, prapancha that gets created. So Chaya Devi becomes his second wife. Anyway, that is aside. Yeah. The another important concept associated with this Chaitanyam and Jivatva, because we are talking of Atma and Prana here. Correct? So which one I get attached to becomes my reality. If I get attached to this Prana, like senses did, Prana becomes my reality. I remain as the Jiva. Why I'm telling that? As I mentioned, the original consciousness and the reflection of the original consciousness, they have a similar characteristics of three powers that I mentioned. For example, Avarana Vikshepa is another example. Whatever the characteristics of the original, it appears to be same as the reflected ones. Similar to what Gurudev has said, I sit in front of the mirror, the image appears exactly like me. So here what we are talking about, I will give you a technical definition of the jiva. Antakarana visishta chaitanyam. This is what the Shastras say is the reality of the jiva. Antakarana is inside, mind. Visishta, very specific aspect in your antakarana. Means, if the lake is very clear, like Minnavanka Lake, for example, sun in Minnavanka appears bright, shiny. I remember a few years before we left Calgary last time, there was floods in Banff, huge floods. And we went to Johnston Lake after that to see, very near to Minnavanka. It was all completely dirty because it has brought out all the muck into this one. If you see a reflection of the sun in such a lake, you hardly see, it looks like a moon. The brightness is gone. It doesn't heat up the water. Water is very cold. Why it happens? Because the medium is like that. So Visishta is very specific to that particular mind. Then it becomes reflection is as good as the reflected medium, so to say. Okay. So Antakarana Visishta Chaitanyam. So a Chaitanyam that gets reflected in individual people like all of us appear to be different. Okay. It got mixed up. It got mixed up and it is called Antakarana Visishta Chaitanya. But if it is, if I'm able to take it out, that muck associated with that, and I see the sun separate from the reflection in the, I'm not telling that we will stop seeing sun in the water. As long as water is there, sun's reflection will be visible. But as long as I understand the reality associated with that particular reflection, then it becomes what is called as Antakarana Upahita Chaitanya. Upahita, when we talk about Upadhi. So if I say water is just an Upadhi for that reflection, I'm seeing reflection. I cannot deny the existence of the reflection, but I am able to distinguish that this is something which is beyond, but at the same time, I'm able to see and experience that that particular thing, distinguishing that upadhi. That is called Antakarana Upahita Chaitanyam Sakshi. Couple of examples they give for this. Yeah. One example for Jiva, for example. If you suppose you go into a town, you are seeing a 10 row of 10 houses there, for example. And I don't know which house belongs to Mohiniji. Sorry, you are just in front of me, so I am telling you. So I'm seeing that house and I say, I'm asking somebody, where does Mohiniji live? Which house is that? The guy who is replying has got two options. One, he might say that that blue house which is there is the one where Mohiniji lives. Then blue color of the house, it exists and it distinguishes other houses around. So I'm hoping that it is not like some Jaipur or where every house is blue. Eh? This house is very specific blue color. I'm able to use the color of the house to distinguish from the others. So it stays along with, it becomes part of that. And at the same time, it distinguishes from the other houses. Now, tomorrow, if somebody comes and asks the same question to this person, he can continue to say, it is the blue color house. So it becomes part of that house. At the same time, it distinguishes other houses from that. This becomes a jiva. Now, what do I say upahitam then? Suppose the person says that all are white houses there. Now I cannot distinguish using a color. So I require something else. Suppose a crow is on top of the house. Person can say, oh, you see that crow? Where on top of the house? Okay. That is where Mohiniji lives. Then the crow becomes a distinguishing feature compared to all others. But tomorrow if we come, that crow may not be there anymore. Yeah. So I'm seeing something feature which is distinguishing this particular thing from others, but at the same time, it is separate from that particular. So if I'm seeing at a mind for a jiva, for example, If I say that consciousness is part and parcel of that particular person, if I describe that as a particular consciousness as part of the person, like a red color rose, the color of the rose distinguishes from the other roses around, if it is a bouquet of roses given. So it becomes part and parcel. If I view consciousness as part and parcel of my antakkarana visishta chaitanyam, I am a jiva. But if I say mind is there, agree, but it may be reflecting anything, consciousness is like a crow sitting on it and providing that distinctness with respect to others. If I look at consciousness as an external object associated with antakkarana, then that becomes a upahita chaitanyam, becomes a sakshi. Okay. These are all stock examples. Please know that this is not my example. Even Naishkamya Siddhi, Sureshwaracharya used these examples. So how old they are, really we don't know. But these are examples that are given for us to understand what a jiva, how I jiva become a sakshi by taking out as if it is internal to me, internal to my mind, internal to my antakkarana, to identify that consciousness as a crow sitting on me. I am only getting a reflection of that, a sun's reflection that is coming here. That is how the two distinctions are made with respect to the nature of the consciousness, status of the consciousness. Now, are we okay for having this class till 11:40 like what we normally use? Okay. Or anybody has got any stop at 11:30? I would like to complete this verse if possible. That's why I'm asking. You're okay? I'm okay. So with this, actually, the Guru has already answered the first question that has come. How is it born? It is born of the Atma. But at the same time, Rishi was very, very quick, as if to avoid the student getting confused. He says, it is born of like a shadow to the man. So very clear in terms of the answering of the first question was. Second question he is asked is, how does it enter the body? He says, mano krutena. How does mano krutena come into picture? How mind is involved with the creation of this? One beautiful example Swamiji gives is, if you put a pot, a glass jar, or a jar or a steel jar, doesn't matter, out in the open, where the sun is bright on the top. Nothing is there, the jar gets lighted up. But if you start pouring water into that, after water reaches a certain level, you start seeing the reflection of that sun in the water. So Gurudev asked, how this reflection got created? If somebody asks, obvious answer to that is, water created the reflection. Only that person will know that, really speaking, water doesn't create anything. It is the very nature of the water to reflect things, very nature of that object to get reflected in that particular water. So because of that, it appears as if water is creating the sun inside. Gurudev says that if you don't refuse to see the logic that water is not doing anything in terms of real creation as such, you are doomed. You remain a jiva. But if you say that sun's reflection automatically got created, like a shadow automatically got created, it got manifested because of the very nature of the things that we are seeing. How do I say nature of the things? Suppose the same jar, instead of water, you start pouring sand in it. You don't see any reflection. Sand doesn't create the sun. Same jar, same sun, same position. So it is the nature of the water to reflect. And it is as if it is creating a sun inside it as a reflection. How sun got created? water got created. Similarly, here he is telling that manokrutena, the mind creates the prana. Mind creates, or mind is the reason why prana enters. Gurudev says that this is very clear. How it is clear? The reflection in our, as far as the concept of individuality is concerned in our this one, as I mentioned, Ichha Shakti remains a power that is there in our Maya. Maya is part and parcel of our being as such. When Ichha Shakti is there, the desire is there, going beyond, there are certain inclinations that come as part of our causal body. Karana Sharira is described sometimes as Vasana. Vasana is the very inclination. These are the inclinations. Once prana gets reflected, inclinations get enhanced. And inclination is the one which gives individually our desires. If my inclination is sattvic, my desire will be to go on a pilgrimage. If my inclination is tamasic, my desire is to sleep for 16 hours a day. If my inclination is rajasic, then I will go to a war. Or I will go to a job, I will go to a bar, doesn't matter. My inclination is rajasic by nature. So these inclinations actually are the impetus for the desire to be there. And desire is a bedrock for any action that we take outside. When we take action outside, there is a result that automatically comes with respect to this particular action that we take, which we call as samskara. These samskaras either reinforce your existing vasana or create new vasana. So this is a cycle. When somebody falls into this cycle of desire, action, result, desire, action, result, is some person which we call as jiva in the bondage of this samsara. Automatically, the jiva falls into this cycle, avidya kama karma. Avidya is nothing but that avarana that we talked about. That is etad, atad term that is used in this particular this one. And when that avarana is there, vikshepa automatically comes in. So a person falls into this cycle of avidya kama karma. This triad is mentioned in many of them, is the reason why the samsara runs. Very, very long time it runs. A jiva gets entangled with this particular aspects. So since this particular thing is generating a will and an action, desire and an action, and the result, and again it leads to another desire, he says, this is the one which actually is making me take birth again and again. And when Rishi answers the person, it is manokrutena. Why prana is entering? Prana requires mind for it to reflect. Just like sun requires water for it to reflect, mirror requires object requires a mirror for the image to be reflected inside. Similarly, the Atman requires the medium of mind for it to reflect in to start with. So why prana is getting, how it is entering the body? Because I am in the cycle of action result, desire action result, avidya kama karma, automatically the reason why a jiva is getting created, a prarabdha karma is coming into picture, is because of these vasanas which are there. And vasanas become part and parcel of the antakarana which gets created when a jiva takes birth. So a mind is required for the reflection of this Atman. Prana in the antakarana requires a prana to be created, jiva to be created, and jiva gets created because of the mind. So the very vasanas that we talk about are nothing but addition of these samskaras, which I do it in this life and I'm not coming out of it, is responsible for next jivatva, next birth that I take. And next birth, what is getting supported? Same vasanas, same set of strong vasanas I carry over, and that creates the prarabdha karma. And this is the reason why prana is so entering to the body. You see the connection between these two, mano krutena. How beautifully one simple word, he explains the entire karma siddhanta as to how antakarana is getting created and how antakarana is important for the reflection of Atman, which I call it as prana. It is nothing but jivatvam, antakarana, visishta chaitanyam. Chaitanyam remains same. The three powers remain the same. Sachidananda Atma gets reflected as Satchit Ananda in my mind. Ananda becomes important for me. Existence becomes a reality for me. Consciousness becomes reality for me. Because Atman is ever effulgent, I think mind is ever effulgent. Remember this word. Because Atman is ever effulgent, I think my mind is ever effulgent. I attribute the consciousness principle, awareness principle to my mind rather than like a color of the house, rather than like a crow sitting on the house. Consciousness is not integral part of the mind, but because it is like a moon, moon doesn't rotate with respect to earth. It shows only one side of its face to the earth, ever effulgent. As long as the sun is there and if a shiny surface is there, it continues to reflect. It doesn't stop. Similarly, because Brahman is ever effulgent, we think our mind is ever effulgent, and I attribute that effulgence to my mind. I must understand this effulgence comes from the crow outside. It is not integral part of me. They are different from each other. Very important concepts of Advaita Vedanta. Mohini ji, you wanted to ask something.
Okay, I wanted to ask that in this situation, it seems mind is the substratum for us.
For a jiva, mind is the substratum, you can say that. However,
for us, mind is the substratum, and for mind, it's the prana substratum. I don't know how to put it.
Yeah, you are more or less in line with what you are thinking. Yes.
Twisting my language, right?
Yeah.
Seems one and the same thing, in other words.
It's like this, yeah. The mind, the prana becomes a substratum for the mind because mind always appears to be intelligent, effulgent, conscious. When I'm awake, nowhere I think that the mind is different from my consciousness. It appears to be product of the consciousness.
Okay, then this has a little bit significance in the sense that when in other books they say that when there is no mind, then you have reached to the highest. So that's what it is.
It's like this, yeah. Substratum word you have used, but you have used all the mithya aspects as a substratum, which is not correct. If I say that the snake's poison, which it is releasing, is that the substrate, that thing is the poison substratum, the snake? Answer should be yes. Without the snake, that particular thing won't come. If is the snake substratum for your hood, which it brings out when it is angry, that snake, you must say yes. Without the snake, this particular thing is not there. But one must understand snake itself is a mithya. Original substratum is that particular rope. So when you ask me whether mind substratum is the prana, it is right. But prana substratum is the Atman, remember that. Yeah. So original substratum is the real substratum. These are all relative to the same mithya vastu you are talking about. So one must not get carried away by divisions within this mithya. Whole of thing is whose substratum is that Atman, that is my reality. Okay. I hope this example also gives you clarity.
Okay, one more thing. When we say that prana is born of Atman, so it is same thing like we are Atmans.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly, you got it right.
Second thing, in one example, not here, somewhere it said that if we take a glass of water from sea, it is sea, right? So we are not part of the sea, we are the sea then.
Yeah, again,
But we say many times we are the part of the sea, like a pearl in the mala garland. So
since you gave the example of sea, for example, yeah, suppose you take a Krishna's idol made of metal and you drop it into the ocean. Now that metallic Krishna became part of the ocean. You can say that. But suppose better example would be if I carry a Krishna made of salt,
dissolves.
I drop it into the sea. Now it becomes part of the sea. So the Krishna distinguishable from the ocean, but at the same time, ocean is different from a Krishna that is became part of the ocean.
I think we need to study this.
These are very important concepts of Advaita Vedanta. That's why I'm trying to spend a bit more time on this particular verse. Till now, prana is so told to be the best thing in the world. Suddenly, it is reduced in its status, and Rishi said that it is nothing but a shadow.
I think if I stick to this thing that I am the consciousness, I think I better off there than going into these things.
Now, these become
Whichever way
important
that
when
consciousness comes, I don't know. But
No,
I am consciousness. That is what I have to be clear about.
Govindiji, these things become important when somebody comes and tries to confuse you with other concepts.
They are already doing. Okay, thank you.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you.
We will not have class next week because of the retreat, yeah.
Because